again, many of you guys actually sent me this video. I've seen it. It's been making the rounds online. I'm not going to show it to you, obviously, because it's too graphic. But it shows, you know, it shows something that happened in Ukraine. I'll read you from the New York Times. I'll read you the headline, which I think is you know, quite succinct. It says a video shows Russian prisoners of war in Ukraine being beaten and shot in their legs. Right? So that's Russian soldiers that have been captured who are prisoners of war, and Ukrainian soldiers are beating them and shooting them in their legs. So this, again, it's very graphic. I'm not going to show you any images. I'm not going to show you any video of it. I'm just reading to you the headline, and then I'll explain a bit more, right? So I'm going to scroll here so you can't see anything. And let's take a look at what else they have to say. So they say a video shared online shows soldiers who are likely Ukrainian beating and shooting prisoners from the Russian military. The footage shows 5 of the prisoners tied up and lying on the ground, some held at gunpoint and some with bags over their heads. In the footage, which runs over for 5 minutes, the tied up prisoners appear to have serious injuries, but it's not clear how they were wounded. And then later in the video, 3 other captives are shot in their legs without provocation and fall to the ground. Again, it's very graphic. I don't want to read all of it because of the, you know, I don't want YouTube doing its thing. And there was, of course, this whole debate, like, yeah, is it real? Because it's a fair question. I mean, there's a lot of fake stuff that was coming out in the first few weeks. You know, Snake Island, Ghost of Kiev. Now, in this case, this is not pro-Ukrainian. It's quite the opposite, but still, it's a very valid question. There's so much fake footage. It's unbelievable. So this turns out is real. And again, it's not me saying that. It's actually the New York Times. Because down here, they say that the location of the video, which was first suggested by a Twitter user, has been independently verified by the Times. It was filmed on the eastern outskirts of Kharkiv, near the front line of the conflict in an area held by Ukrainian forces. I mean, that's you know, they're stopping just short of basically saying the Ukrainians did this, because there's no other footage like it where you can say, oh, this is from Syria or something. No, it's obviously not from another theater of war, and it's not from another time. This is new footage, and I mean, if the New York Times are are verifying it, you know, you don't need me to say anything, because the only way that they actually verify these things is if it's really just overwhelming, and they have no choice but to talk about it. To be fair, though, I haven't seen this really talked about in general, except by people who've been trying to highlight the crime itself. But I mean, the liberal media, they're not touching this. If it was the other way around, if Russians were doing this to Ukrainians, I mean, they would have absolutely spoken about it, right? Now, something else that confirms this video is true. They say that following the circulation of this video, an advisor to the head of Ukraine's president's office, so an advisor to Zelensky, put out this video, okay? Now, let's take a look at what he says.
Subject to... I would like to remind all our military, civilian and defense forces once again that torturing a captive is a war crime which is not subject to amnesty under international law and has no statute of limitations. I remind everyone that we are a European army of a European country. We behave with war prisoners according to the Geneva Convention.
He's inadvertently confirming that it's true, because he's having to remind Ukrainian soldiers that you have to respect the Geneva Convention. You cannot torture prisoners of war. I mean, the timing is a bit bizarre, right? If the other bit where the New York Times is confirming the video isn't enough for you. So that's several pieces now that are confirming it's true. And of course, for those of you who don't know, the Geneva Convention is basically a set of rules. It's nothing new. I mean, they did this already with the Hague Convention. So this is late 19th, early 20th century, and then they had the Geneva Convention as well. And it's basically, it lays out the rules for war. You know, if you capture someone, you can't just execute them because they're a soldier. You have to treat them well, give them medical attention. You can't torture them, things like that. And so obviously, when you're shooting people in the leg, you know, you're breaking the Geneva Convention, even if the opposing army didn't sign it, which was the argument the Nazis used in World War II, right? They would kill the Russian soldiers, and they would say, well, Russia didn't sign the Geneva Convention, which is a bullshit argument, because it doesn't matter if the person you captured signed it or not, their country. I mean, if you signed it, you got to respect it. It's pretty horrifying, right? And the only thing you've been hearing, like, for the last 24 hours is, oh, you know, Will Smith, he slapped Chris Rock at the Academy Awards. And then liberals are like, oh, violence is unacceptable. Violence is never the answer. It is never okay to hit someone. Do you think they made a peep about this, where you like have people, Ukrainian soldiers shooting Russian POWs in the kneecap so they're crippled for life? Like, you're so against violence, you don't say anything about this. You're so against violence that you want World War III, right? Like, they're like, 1 second they're like, violence is never the answer. When is World War III starting? How about a no-fly zone? I mean, I can't believe these clowns. I really can't believe these clowns. It's unbelievable. They're only anti-violence when it suits them, apparently. You know, why make a fuss about this? I can assure you one thing. Again, if the roles were reversed, you know, we'd never hear the end of it. We'd never hear the end of it. But when these things happen, it's like in Syria. It reminds me of Syria, where you had, for example, people in these so-called rebels that were firing these mortars on Damascus, and they were killing students, they were killing civilians. You would never hear about that in the Western press because they don't want to highlight it, right? So you would only hear like the stuff that's anti-Assad, anti-Russia. You would, oh, look, Russia bombed a hospital. Russia did this, Assad did that. Even when it's not true, like the chemical attacks turn out not to be true. So they would pump that through the news cycle, but you would never hear the other side of it, which is actually not just true, but also rampant. It's happening on a daily basis, where the mortars are coming down, killing civilians, wounding civilians. You would never hear that because it doesn't fit the narrative. So here they won't tell you about this, or you will find it in the New York Times, but it's like buried and it's just a few paragraphs. They're not going to put it on the front page as if, you know, as if they would when the roles were reversed. You get my point, right? There's an incentive not to really make a fuss out of it. There's not going to be any Biden speech. You're not going to have NATO convening about it. Nothing. And again, it's kind of funny because weren't they saying just a few weeks ago that they want to set up this war crimes tribunal for Putin? Like, again, I don't want to go through this, but the fact that Tony Blair has escaped war crimes prosecution, right? You cannot come now and say, well, okay, Tony Blair escaped judgment because the crime of aggression is not illegal in the UK, but we're going to try Putin. I mean, this is absurd, right? But my point is that on top of that, they're saying, like, Putin's a war criminal. Biden just the other day saying he's a butcher, he's a war criminal. Remember that reporter who says, like, but who's asking Biden, do you think he's a war criminal? And then Biden comes back after 2 minutes and like, what was the question? Yes, I think he's a war criminal. You think they're going to say that about Zelensky? Of course not. Of course not, man. Double standards all day, every day. You know, another thing that I wanted to add, this video that's been going around, you basically have Ukrainian soldiers calling the families of the deceased, right? So of dead Russian soldiers, to mock and swear at them. I mean, this is just harrowing. To my knowledge, this has been verified. Again, I would not be surprised if a lot of things turn out to be fake, because that's what's happened. But to my knowledge, this has been verified. If I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me. But, you know, the things that do turn out to be fake, we've covered them. This is not one of them to my knowledge. And the big video that everyone is talking about right now with the POWs being in the knees, that is real. Even the New York Times confirmed that.